Cheese. Okay. Monotheism, polytheism, and henotheism. We're going to learn these concepts. Today's lecture is really just laying the foundation for the next 3 Sundays. And the next 3 Sundays are going to be the mind-blowing lectures. So if anything's mind-blowing today, just know we're setting the surface. Wait till the next couple of Sundays. So we'll move on from there. But anyways, let's get into what we're talking about today. So, does anybody know we have Hindus next door? So we got a little temple next door. Does anyone here know Hinduism has 330 million gods? Is it a polytheism or a monotheism? You're all wrong. It's a monotheism. Walk next door and ask them. Now, I've had different Hindus in my class, like fresh from India, and I've had a couple people who said polytheism, but most agreed that it's a monotheism. So how is Hinduism with 330 million gods a monotheism? It doesn't seem to make sense.
They actually look at them like we look at the saints. Each one of them represents a different aspect of God. God the Father, God the Son, God the
Yeah, the saints or the Trinity. Either way. But yeah, it's there is one God. But they are different expressions, different ways of knowing, different ways of communicating with the one God. So that is, they would see themselves as a monotheism at that point, which I always love because I always have like some ultra Christian in my classroom at some point go, nah, I'm not buying it. They got 330 million gods, it's 330 million gods. You can't say that it's a monotheism. And then that's when I come back and I'm like, oh, you mean like with the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, you can't say that it's a monotheism because like, well, no, it's 3 gods, but they're representing them. I'm like, yeah, that's what they're doing. So it's pretty similar. So in that way, as far as concept wise, the saints. So we have different saints. Now these are not gods, but if you're Catholic, I know I've got a couple of Catholics in here. If you have a garden and you're going to put a statue on the garden, do you guys know who you're going to put a statue of?
St. Francis of Assisi.
So that very specific one for your garden. So there is I'm going to go overboard, a God for your garden specifically. And each one of these will have a different role that they're going to play in the system of this monotheism. So we, what are we a monotheism? Anyways, we'll get into it. We'll figure out what we are. So monotheism is belief in one God. We all know that. Although we're blurring the lines here, of course. Polytheism is the belief in many gods. And now to answer Alan's question. Henotheism, it is not the worship of chickens. So, so what henotheism is henotheism, call it a hybrid of polytheism and monotheism. So monotheism is the belief in one God, period. One God. Polytheism, we believe in many gods. So in a polytheism, if you want your crops to grow, you'll pray to the God of the harvest. If you want to kill your enemy, you will invoke the God of destruction or the God of war, or so you're going to play with all these gods. If you're a henotheism, you get the fact that there are many other gods, but my God is the best God. Okay, so you're not playing in a system of many gods. You're not using all the gods. You're just using your one God because your God is the best God. So the way I tell it to my college students, I go with the mascot. So at Kent State, it was the Flashes, and their rival was Akron, the Roos, with the kangaroo. And I said, okay, so we worship the Flash. The Flash is our God. We know that there are other gods out there, but that Roo, he's not as powerful as the Flash, So there are different gods that are out there. So when you talk about going to war, whose God's going to be the winning God? My God is stronger than your God. I think that my God's going to beat your God in the war. So I understand that there are many gods, but I worship one. Now think of how many Christians talk today. many Christians talk in a language that's probably more resembling a henotheism than a polytheism. Oh, that Muslim God's a mean God. Oh, but your God's better, right? Than the or whatever way you're going to phrase it. It's we even do it in Christianity, which gets really confusing. You know, the New Testament God is really loving, but that Old Testament God is really angry. It's different gods. What? So anyways, that's henotheism. So now we're going to look at the Bible. So, see, I am the only Elohim, a word for God, but we're going to talk about Elohim later, but I'm not going to get into it a lot right now, but just know that that's a word for God. I am the only Elohim, there are no others, and yada, yada, yada. Is this a monotheism, polytheism, or henotheism? I am the only Elohim, there are no others. Monotheism. Indeed, you are great, a worker of miracles. You alone are Elohim. Monotheism, polytheism, or henotheism? Anyone? Monotheism. All right, there we go. I needed answers. All right. Deuteronomy 6:4. Listen, Israel, Yahweh is our Elohim. Yahweh is the only God.
Monotheism.
You are shown these things so that you would know that Yahweh is Elohim. There is no other God.
Monotheism.
So, Bible's very clear on monotheism, right? This is what Yahweh says. I am the first and the last. There is no Elohim except me. Monotheism. One day, the sons of Elohim came to stand in front of Yahweh. Satan, the accuser, came along with them. Monotheism, polytheism, or henotheism? Henotheism? Henotheism. I mean, you're going to play it out a little bit better, but you're going to see that we think that Yahweh's pretty cool. But Elohim's a different God. And he has sons that stood before Yahweh. What's going on here? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, and we also have this guy over here. So we'll talk about him. That's a whole other lecture, but we'll get into that. The sons of Elohim saw that the daughters of other humans were beautiful, so they married any woman they chose. Henotheism, monotheism, polytheism. This one's more straight up polytheism. It's not naming one God being greater than another God. It's just talking about all these gods. Then Elohim said, let us make humans in our image and our likeness. Let us go down and mix up their language so that they won't understand each other. Monotheism, polytheism, polytheism. Yahweh is a great El and a great Melech above all gods. Henotheism? Yeah. There is none like you among the gods, O Lord, yada, yada. Henotheism. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods because in this affair they dealt arrogantly with the people, yada, yada, yada. There are other gods, but ours is the cat's meow. Here's what most Christians think is the quintessential monotheistic statement, the Ten Commandments. You shall have no other gods before me.
Henotheism.
Henotheism. Okay, now I need Carl in the room, which is not. I need a good lawyer because we're gonna dissect the language here. Can you have the other gods? You just can't have them before me. So, henotheism would be my first guess, but there's an argument for polytheism. That you can have the other gods, but make sure that Yahweh is the Zeus of the gods.
And then there's how all this is translated from the Greek.
And we're going to get into that big time. We're going to get into this big time. Okay, so a polytheism is a system of beliefs where there's many gods. Generally, there is the head of the pantheon, who is the generally, again, many pantheons out there, you're going to find different expressions. But generally, the head of the pantheon is the father of the other gods, and they're seen as the kind of the parent in some way. Now, going backwards. Can I go backwards? There we go. No, I'm going. Keep going forward. I don't want to go forward. Okay, we're gonna keep this. I'm going to go do this. So when you go to the system of angels, which was the scene you just saw before, you have God, and you have all the angels, and you have an angel that keeps the gates of heaven. You have an angel that's a destroyer angel. You have an angel that does this or does that, and there's a whole system of angels. What's the difference between that and a polytheism? Okay, and with this, throw the saints in there too. But now we're just kind of talking about angels, but it's working with a similar system. So now we have to ask a question, and this is how I do it in my class with the students. What's the difference between a god and an angel? Okay, well, what's the definition of a god? A god is a divine being that has powers over humans and nature. And everyone knows an angel is different because an angel is a divine being that has powers over humans and nature.
But they have a boss.
But they have wings. And even that's debatable. So but even the other gods have a boss. The head gods. You mess up, you're going to pay to Zeus, you know? So what's the difference in the system? And why are these systems so similar? We're going to be talking about this over the next few weeks here, but we're playing this system. And this is just going into details of, we can go to each of the gods or each of the angels. The angels, these are like, the baseball cards. You turn the card over and you find out what Gabriel's like or Michael. And, these are all the stats and who they are and what they do. I mean, the stories of these angels are very similar to the stories of the different gods of the Greek pantheon. I mean, this is who they are. This is their origin story. This is what they do. This, And then again, just going through messenger. These are all angels. Messenger, weather, death, trumpet. Goes all the way down to what their roles are. Greek gods, Roman gods, and what their roles are. What's the difference between angels and gods? All right, I tell you that to tell you this, which is the beginning part of going into the craziness of the next 3 Sundays. This is Ugarit, and we're going to be talking about the findings of Ugarit. So I'm just going to set this up, so make sure I don't. So a farmer found a grave on his farm and thought this is something I should tell someone about. So I told someone, and they started investigating. And they were drawn to this little hill area here through like Indiana Jones stuff. The legend says that, and then they said, so they started excavating here.
What country is this?
This is actually in Syria. It was French archaeologists, but this is actually located in Syria, which is also another reason why there's not a lot of archaeological digs going on at the moment. But this is in Syria, and so they unearthed some tablets in 1929, and then virtually all the digging has happened here. There's some digging going on right here. About 1/6 of the surface is uncovered. So now with all the stuff that you're going to learn over the next few weeks, know that over the next few weeks we're going to be talking about one set of tablets they found out of many tablets, and they've only uncovered 1/6 of this area. So in 1973, another 120 tablets were discovered, and in 1994, more than 300 tablets were discovered. In 8 different languages. So this is the way I tell my students this. So in 1994, of course, I've had to change the way I told it as I've been teaching through the years, but originally I could say, when you were born, they found this treasure trove of 300 tablets when you were born. But they just found them, and they're in pieces. There are people who are literally, their job is an archaeologist puzzler. And they take the pieces and they put them together. You know, I'm sure some of you, many of you have been to different places, but when I've been to places of significance like that, you'll see people with a pile of debris grabbing pieces and putting them together. They sit in the hot sun all day trying to find pieces that match. And they're just sitting there doing that. So now you have to put these pieces together. Once you put these pieces together, you're like, this is written in 8 different languages. We need to find someone who can read cuneiform fluently. How many people in the world read cuneiform fluently? And they got other projects they're working on, but we'd like them to work on this one too. So we have to get this person to read the cuneiform. They translate it from the cuneiform into whatever language they're doing, French, English, whatever. Now when they got it translated, now someone who is more of a historian is going to read that translation. And they're going to read the translation and they go, oh, wow, there's a lot of religious stuff in this particular one. I need to get a religious scholar on this. So now the religious scholar comes in. And this is all happening over the course. This is taking years, for all this to develop. So now picture my college students who are now 18, 19, 20 years old sitting in my classroom. They were at least in diapers or whatever when this is all happening. This is all developing over their lifetime. This is not just new information. It's cutting edge. It's bleeding edge. The public outside the scholarly world generally doesn't know about this unless you are a person who likes to look for things like this and then study it. But generally it's not. You don't see a lot of preachers teaching Sunday schools on this topic. Okay, so what you're going to learn is information that's just not been out there before. So we're going to focus on the Baal cycle. 2,350 lines. It's completely in 6 tablets. So we have it. It's not just fragmented. We have its complete set. And it's the most important text found in Ugarit. Anyone know the name Baal? Yeah? So you might have some connection to the Bible, maybe. Yeah. So we'll get into that. Okay. So how much, you still got like 10 minutes before you gotta leave, 8 minutes before you gotta leave? Okay, we're gonna get into next week's lesson here, and we'll just see, because I just kind of grabbed these. I wasn't sure how fast we'd be blowing through this here, but we're gonna get into this to give you an idea of where we're going with this. So in this Baal cycle, we learn about the Western Semitic pantheon of gods, okay? Now, when we talk about the Western Semitic pantheon of gods, if you're talking about it using Christian language, you're talking about the Canaanites. But the Canaanites is problematic because when you're talking about Canaanites, you're seeing them as someone other than the Israelites. And really, the Canaanites is a label that we've created later. The Canaanite people themselves probably wouldn't have called themselves the Canaanite people. So we have this this region of tribal people of different kinds in the Western Semitic region, which would be, into Syria, down into Iran or Iraq, Israel, that whole area. Maybe not complete Iran and whatever, but that kind of swath in the Middle East, right there, or that part of the Middle East. Western Semitic pantheon of gods. The Levant would be a better way of referring to it if you understand the Levant. That's another terminology for that region. But here's a short list of the Western Semitic pantheon of gods. What do we see here? We see Yahweh, Baal, El, and possibly a couple other familiars, depending on how studied you are. But remember Elohim, El. That's going to be a big one we're going to be talking about. So El is the creator God. He lives in a tent or a tabernacle, according to these tablets. He's the father of the pantheon of gods. He dwells on a mountaintop and is seated at the divine council and is elderly with a long white beard. Does this guy sound familiar? Okay. El. This is El. Baal is the oldest son of El and therefore the rightful heir. Restless and unhappy under his father's direct supervision, but he's not in competition with his dad. He's in competition with his siblings, because the whole inheritance things, what happens, you're jockeying, even though you're the oldest son, things happen, so, and the other gods want to displace Baal and become their heir. When I talk about it in my class, I always talk about a family business, and the father's going to give it to the oldest son because that's just the traditional way of doing things. But all of the siblings know that the oldest son is a piece of crap, and he's going to run dad's business into the ground, and they're trying to jockey and save the business and whatnot. And so that's kind of what's going on here. This is just showing nothing more than just showing he is in the Bible. Okay, so when you just do a general search, 125 times Baal comes up. It might come up different times in different translations because someone might use a pronoun instead of his name, but it's about 125 times. So Baal's a fairly main character in the Bible, or at least the Old Testament, and talked about often enough. And then again, just showing, so my students aren't like, oh, you're just making it up. No, he's in the Bible. So there he is. Now we have other gods, okay, in the Bible. In the Bible. In the Bible. Here's an interesting one. Athrat is the wife of El. So El has a wife, okay? And she has, all of the kids are both of their kids, but there are 7 specific kids of hers. In this language, the way the tablets talk about them, they talk about her children rather than their or El's children. But there's 7 children, and the 7 children are representing different celestial objects, and they are referred to in the tablets as the host of heaven, or the heavenly host, if you've ever heard of that before. So in Deuteronomy 4:19, and when you look up to the heavens and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the host of heaven, do not be led astray and bow down to them or serve them. So do not worship the heavenly host. They're bad people, okay? 1 Kings 22:19. Therefore, hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all of the host of heaven standing beside him, to the right and to the left. So now they're good people. They're God's posse. They're his. So are they bad people, or are they on our side or not on our side? 2 Kings, that was 1 Kings. They rejected all of the commandments of the Lord their God and made for themselves images of 2 calves, which is, by the way, the calf is an image of Baal, or a symbol of Baal, and made a sacred pole. Sacred pole is actually El's wife's symbol, okay? And worshiped the host of heaven and served Baal. So the host of heaven is on Baal's team, not our team. So don't worship the host of heaven, and don't worship Baal. Yada, yada, yada. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne with all the host of heaven standing to the right and to the left of him. Oh, so they are good people, not bad people. Okay, I'm getting confused here of whose team we're on. Luke, Christmas time. Suddenly there was with the angels a multitude of the heavenly host praising and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. So, they're on our team again. Basically, let me see. And then this just shows it's also in the Quran too. So my Muslim students hate it when I bring that up. So what we're seeing here, we're still only tiptoeing into this. What we're seeing here is this new discovery that we did not have before is unlocking a brand new interpretation of the Bible that we never knew existed before. We've heard heavenly hosts before. Never once crossed our mind to think of where that came from. We just accepted. Or what they were. We just They're heavenly hosts. So that sounds good, and then we just accepted and we went on with our day. We saw all these other gods in the Bible. We know, or some of you might know, we know that God is sometimes referred to as Elohim and sometimes referred to as Yahweh. Why is sometimes God referred to as Elohim and sometimes referred to as Yahweh? Do I have any Hebrew scholars here? No? You put I am at the end of the word, and it's like putting S at the end of the word in English. It turns it into a plural. Elohim. Gods. Plural.